Hey everybody, welcome to the Gush number 20. We got a whole, like a year. This is like season one, I guess, if we were a TV show of classic movie gushing. And we're finishing off the year with a phenomenal film, not just our favorite Christmas movie ever, one of our favoriteest overall movies ever.
Ever.
It is called It's a Wonderful Life, starring Jimmy Stewart, Donna Reed, who else? So many people. Lionel Barrymore, Henry Travers, directed by Frank Capra. The American classic, just a phenomenal film. How much do you love this movie, Melissa Tagg?
So much that I don't even really have words for it.
That's why
I
you're
really
here.
love it.
Is the
Yeah.
power of description you just demonstrated.
Yeah, it's it's just a really wonderful movie. It's really great. I love it. Everybody needs to watch it.
They do. And there are some people that haven't seen It's a Wonderful Life. I'm always intrigued by that.
They're crazy people.
But even worse are people who have seen It's a Wonderful Life and don't love it to death.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with people in that case. I mean, I really don't. I don't.
I guess sometimes you talk to people and they just be like, I just don't watch movies, or I just can't pay attention during movies. Like every once in a while you hear that, and I guess I can understand that more than no, I like movies and I don't like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if there's anybody even in that category that has a soul.
Well, some people just don't love movies. That's okay.
That's a different thing.
Some people don't love classic movies, and so they just haven't given it a chance, or
That's very true.
they can't get over the black and white thing or something silly like that.
Yeah.
I have known people that have watched it and they just had kind of a, oh, that was nice reaction. Kind of like your reaction to Miracle on 34th Street. And they're like, that's just not okay with It's a Wonderful Life.
No.
It's not a movie that you watch and you say, oh, that was nice. It's a movie that you watch and you say, that was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. And then you go out and you go out and you read books about it and you read IMDb
and you watch obscure 30-year-old clips that somebody found on VHS and put on the internet. I know.
All the special features. Yep.
It is so good. I love introducing people to this film. I was introduced to It's a Wonderful Life by my college roommate. He was 21 and super cool, and I was 17 and super lame. And he was like, you have to fix this problem in your life right now. And I loved it. So do a quick breakdown. What is It's a Wonderful Life about?
Okay, I will try to do a quick breakdown. It's a Wonderful Life starts out in heaven, actually, and it's because it's kind of about an angel who wants to get his wings. He's an angel second class, and in order to earn his wings, he needs to go help George Bailey, who is played by Jimmy Stewart, who is the star of the movie. George Bailey, throughout the whole first half, we kind of get to see George Bailey's life get set up. He does these wonderful things. You see that he's a great, nice, kind of small town guy. He saves his brother when his brother falls under some ice. He saves a pharmacist from putting poison in pills. He just does all these great, wonderful things. When he's finally ready to go to college and leave his town, he's always wanted to leave his town and travel. Right when he's getting ready to do that, his father dies, and so he ends up staying and taking over his father's building and loan business. And then he meets Mary Hatch, who is played by Donna Reed, who is from Iowa, and they get married, and so he has 4 kids, and he never gets to leave his small town, and he just carries on his family business. So when things all go downhill for him and the story kind of starts, George Bailey's building and loan business has just lost $8,000, and that's a huge amount to them, and they're going to go under, and he's actually going to get arrested for losing this money. And he goes to Henry Potter, who is the bad guy in town, and asks for help and doesn't get any help, and there's a warrant out for his arrest, and so he goes to a bridge and he's ready to commit suicide, thinking, at least if I commit suicide, I have this life insurance policy. And right as he's about to jump, Clarence, who is the angel, comes down from heaven and jumps into the water first, and George has to go save him. And afterwards, as George is telling him all his woes, Clarence the angel says, well, I'm going to let you see what the world would be like if you had never been born, because George's kind of big line is that he just wishes he'd never been born, that everybody would be better off. So he gets to see what the world would be like if he'd never been born. And he realizes that it really is a wonderful life and that he's made a difference in a lot of people's lives.
Don't you see, George? You really had a wonderful life.
Yes, yes.
You get so excited about this movie. You are incapable of doing a quick synopsis.
I'm sorry. Yeah, and the thing is, I feel like I just left a lot of stuff out of that synopsis, but
there's so much, and it's one of those things because you can watch this movie over and over and over. It's aged remarkably well. That's one of the things you find about great movies. Something about them where there's a timeless quality. I think the black and white is part of the magic of classic movies. Obviously, we're purists.
Yeah.
And color actually plays a part in the story of this story, because as it turns out, the blessing curse is that in 1974, due to a clerical error, somebody mistakenly let the copyright lapse. So It's a Wonderful Life came out in 1946. It was a flop. It didn't make enough money. It was not seen as a real success story. The studio was angry. They blamed your Iowan friend, Donna Reed, who was awesome.
Yeah, she should not have
been. By the way, if you get to claim Donna Reed, I'm only 90 minutes from Jimmy Stewart's home, from his dad's hardware store, from the Jimmy Stewart Museum. I need to get up there because, yeah, we got Jimmy Stewart.
You have it 90 minutes away and you haven't been there, though?
I know, it's one of the things in my life I'm not proud of at all.
That's okay.
Yeah, I need to fix that.
You have time to
But
fix
in 1974, they let the copyright lapse. So what that meant was any network that wanted could put the movie on TV. Enter It's a Wonderful Life playing ad nauseum around Christmas time. And a lot of people, probably like me, grew up just thinking, oh, that's the movie that's always on, without actually watching the film. But at the same time, it introduced so many people to the film that they saw how wonderful it was when they gave it a fair viewing. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they tried to do, since there was no copyright, was they could do derivative works, and they even tried to colorize it. And poor, like, old Frank Capra and Jimmy Stewart, these guys are trying to fight and testify before Congress to make sure that they didn't show this horrible version because we purists like it black and white.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons. Oh, by the way, the copyright was restored, and eventually only NBC could show the movie, and there's more to that story if you want to read on about it. But that's kind of important to know because it was a terrible thing that they lost control of the film, yet it gave the country really the story in a nostalgic, traditional way.
Yeah, probably a lot of people that never would have watched it got to watch it, So,
now, you don't remember the first time you saw it?
I don't remember, because I grew up watching it, but I remember very clearly, actually, the first time that I was like, holy crap, this movie is amazing, and actually got the story. I mean, I don't know how old I was, but I remember watching it and just thinking to myself, this is the best movie I've ever seen. Yeah.
It's kind of a success story from the self-publishing world, long before self-publishing was ever a thing. Philip Van Dorenstern, I think, is the writer's name. He was shaving one day when he had the idea. It just came to him all of a sudden. This guy is on a bridge contemplating suicide, and he gets to see what the world would have been like if he had never been born. He sent it around, I don't know, 100, 200 different people, they say, and nobody was interested in buying his story. It was called The Greatest Gift. Until finally, by 1945, I think, he was just giving it away as a Christmas gift. And it caught the attention of the head of the studio there at RKO, who then passed it on to his buddy, recently home from war, Frank Capra. And Capra, he said it was the script he had been waiting for his entire life. And the interesting thing I wanted to ask you about is Jimmy Stewart was just home from World War II. Capra's just home from the war. Do you think that formative period, I mean, they didn't know if they were going to even really be able to re-enter Hollywood, right? Do you think that was a big part of the performance and the power of this story?
Yeah, I do. Because It's a Wonderful Life, if you compare it to Frank Capra's earlier films, it is darker. I mean, it goes much deeper into despair than his earlier films, and I think war had a profound impact on Jimmy Stewart and how he played the role, and then Frank Capra and where he was willing to take the story. This is actually the only film that Frank Capra ever had writing credits on, so he had a lot to do with the shaping of the story.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I think the way the direction they took it, even they had the war in the movie, and having George Bailey's brother be in the war. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there was a lot that impacted that, and it's fun to read about how nervous Jimmy Stewart was coming back into this too. You know, he was kind of looking for the perfect movie to get him back into acting, into Hollywood, and yeah, just to read about him being nervous to do some of the different scenes, and not knowing how well he was going to be received anymore. I don't know, just because I look at him and I'm like, he's the best. How could anybody have ever had any doubt? But he doubted himself, and
It's like the perfect performance. I mean,
it is.
it's just so perfect.
He's so
It's
amazing.
hard to believe that he doubted it. Jimmy Stewart had gone off to war. I mean, he was doing everything he could to get himself into, deadly situations. When he was away, he would never talk about Hollywood. When he came home, he wouldn't talk about the war. I have so much respect for the way he held himself and carried himself in that time.
Yeah.
And he always said this was his favorite role, for sure. And I guess we should point out, this wasn't just like a box office flop because it was a terrible movie. They didn't make the best decision, did they, when it came time to release the movie?
No, didn't they come out like right before Christmas? And they came out like a week after the Best Years of Our Lives.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they were kind of doomed.
They released it like a few days before Christmas. The wide release wasn't until after the holiday was over. And like you said, it did get nominated for 5 Oscars, but it got shut out. And The Best Years of Our Lives, which also came out in 1946, it was that movie about soldiers returning home, trying to readjust. A great movie. We're going to watch that one down the line when we get going next year. But probably would have been better off if they wouldn't have rushed it to release it in 1946, because then it would have just been up against Miracle on 34th Street, and
Right.
probably would have won.
Probably.
What's your favorite scene?
Like all of them. One of my favorite scenes is closer to the beginning, and it's when George and Mary are at a dance, and they're in a gym, and the gym floor opens up, and there's a pool underneath, and everybody falls into the pool, and it's so great, and I love it, and I think it's awesome, and pretty much every dance I've ever gone to.
The Charleston contest.
Yeah, I always hope that will happen. Here's something funny. So
wait, you always hope that a Charleston contest will break out?
No, I always hoped that the floor would open and there'd be a pool underneath, and I'd get to jump into it in a dress. But so in that scene, George and Mary fall into the pool, and then a little bit later, like the principal and some teachers all jump in. That was all ad-libbed. Like Frank Capra did not have that planned in, and they just did it. So that's fun. But the end of that scene then is George and Mary on a walk, and the dialogue is just so fun and so cute and so funny, and I love it. It's a really, really great scene.
Is that where they grab the clothes out of the locker room and she's in the robe?
She's in a robe, and he's in a football. They sing. She gets stuck in a bush without the robe, and yeah, everything about that scene is awesome. And then at the very end of it, George finds out his father has had a stroke.
Yeah.
So it takes you from laughter straight to heartbreak. But I also love the scene at the end, right, where George decides to live again, and he's like, Zuzu's petals, and he gets really happy, and he's like, my mouth's bleeding, Bert, my mouth's bleeding. And then he goes running through town.
What do you know about that, Bert?
Yeah. Then he goes running through town. Like, that's so happy. I can't even handle it.
Yeah, and then he gets home, and well, I gotta say this. I notice so many things about this film every time I watch it, and that might be my favorite scene too. The whole they're walking after the pool scene.
Yeah, that is a great scene.
There's just so much good stuff in there. Oh, by the way, Alfalfa from the Little Rascals, who throws the switch gets on the pool
to make the pool. Yeah.
But
yeah,
when I watched it, I just I don't know, it strikes me differently every time. I think it's a movie that strikes me differently as I get older for different reasons. But there was something funny that stood out to me as I was watching it. He comes home after his big revelation, and he runs into the house, and there's like the police and the bank examiner, and he's going to go to jail. And meanwhile, the kids are upstairs. Mary's away. It's like, so she left the kids home.
The kids are just there by themselves.
And I can understand that, right? Because like clearly she had to go. She was desperate to go find help, and this amazing miracle is going to happen. But, but then the police like let themselves in with the kids upstairs. I never noticed that before. It's kind of funny.
I just like when he runs in and he's like, "Kids!"
Yeah. I'm going to jail, isn't it great?
Yeah. It's so happy. It's just like the happiest. And this movie, it's just so great what they do emotionally because they like cover every emotion in the book, but without you as the viewer ever feeling manipulated. Like, I'm not a big Nicholas Sparks fan, and I realize that that's going to make some people hate me, but I feel like I know. I feel like he manipulates readers and viewers and just throws in emotional situations just for the sake of getting a cry out of the readers.
You mean it doesn't advance the story?
Yeah, or he doesn't set it up at all. Like, oh, boom, this person's going to die now because this is the point in the story when somebody's supposed to cry. I really shouldn't be saying this because this is kind of mean. But It's a Wonderful Life.
It's Iowa mean, which is super nice.
It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know. It just takes you so naturally from emotion to emotion, and none of it feels forced or fake or contrived. So
it's so good. I mean, we'd have to talk for an hour to cover everybody from once again Beulah Bondi playing his mother to Uncle Billy, and how about young George? I mean, he's the cutest kid ever.
Yeah, he is great.
I finally looked him up because I was like, who is this kid? How did he not become the most famous person on the planet? And it turns out he did stay in entertainment the rest of his life. His name was Bobby Anderson, and he went more into the, I guess, production directing side of things. He was involved into big projects well into recent years.
Oh, wow.
So you just look at everybody they lined up, from Violet to Bert and Ernie, the cab driver, and the cop. Ward Bond, actually. We've talked about him in a couple other films. He's super famous.
What's the guy on the porch? Dick Elliott?
Dick Elliott, who we saw, what was that, last week? Or no, he was the judge in Christmas in Connecticut.
Oh, yeah, Christmas in Connecticut. Yeah.
There's just so many people.
I read that Frank Capra felt like casting was just like a gut feeling. Like, he just would figure out, like, and they went through a lot of people before they, like, landed on Donna Reed, for instance. But with her, he just was like, she's the one, she's the part. I can see her playing the part, and didn't do a lot else. He just kind of felt it out and decided that way.
No,
he was also quoted as saying, "There's no bad actors, there's only bad directors," and so he felt like the weight was on him to make the performance great for these actors.
Interesting. So how did he get that performance out of Jimmy the Raven? That bird was in so many movies.
Yeah, I think the Bird's first movie was You Can't Take It With You, which is so great. We have to watch that sometime.
We should also talk about Lionel Barrymore, who is like one of the best villains ever. He's so good.
He is so good.
Henry Potter.
He is so good, and if you've seen him in other movies, like he's in You Can't Take It With You, and he's like the happy old grandfather in that one. He's the hero of the movie in that one. So to see him in this role was so different, and they really altered his appearance to make him look different than he had looked in past movies because people were so used to seeing him as the good guy. Oh, and here's a fun fact about this. So we always talk about the production code.
Yes.
One of the facets of the production code was that justice always had to be served in a movie. So if there was a bad guy, we had to see him get his punishment. Well, It's a Wonderful Life, I guess, after it was out, everybody was like, hey, we beat the production code because Potter, played by Lionel Barrymore, he never really, like, he just, you know.
He stole the $8,000.
Yeah, nobody ever finds out, and he just gets away with it. So
interesting. I didn't think about that one.
Yeah.
In the scenes with Potter in his office, our buddy Charles Lane shows up. Remember we saw him in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. He popped up in Arsenic and Old Lace. I kept thinking he was Ray Bolger, and he lived to be like 102 and was in a million different things. Well, he had a pretty prominent, you know, for a character actor, he plays the rent collector who goes in and tells Potter, you better figure out how to pay off George Bailey. So even little side things like him showing up is pretty cool. Violet, Gloria Graham, she was a great actress. She had a really tragic and sad life.
Oh, did she? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but she did win an Oscar eventually for a supporting actress for The Bad and the Beautiful. She went on and did some of that film noir stuff.
She was Ado Annie in Oklahoma too.
Yeah, that was kind of the end. Weird side
really?
note about her. She was like really self-conscious about her appearance, and so she kept, I guess, getting surgeries. She wanted to fix her upper lip, and it ended up leading to speech problems and things like this.
That's so depressing.
So, yeah, well, that's the happy part. But nevertheless, It's a Wonderful Life is much happier than the story of Gloria Graham. And Capra finished it, and he said, I don't think this is just the best movie I've ever made. This might be the best movie ever made. And you could make an argument that it's definitely in the discussion at the very top of the list.
Oh, absolutely. I would argue
even though
that.
the critics won't say that.
It's because they're dumb. The people who matter. It's just fabulous. I mean, I think any movie that can make you feel that much is great, And it's got everything. It's got a great storyline where you really are like, how is this going to be solved? It's got humor. It's got romance. It's got other things. It's
fantasy
just great.
Elements. It's a fantasy tale,
yeah,
right?
It is, yeah.
It's a Christmas Carol in reverse. Lionel Barrymore, by the way, had played Ebenezer Scrooge. And I think it might have been Roger Ebert who said that this is a Christmas Carol in reverse, that instead of you having this miserable character who comes to find happiness, you kind of have this great character who falls into despair.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a story of really, redemption and rescue. And Capra always wanted to show that. He wanted to show the power of an individual's life. And I even read a quote where Capra said he feared that there was a trend towards atheism in his time.
Mm.
He wanted to bring back those positive religious values. Whether you care for that or not, it is certainly an inspirational film. Yeah. And the American Film Institute has declared it the most inspirational film of all time. So the critics can't touch that.
All right. Yeah. You want to know what you bring up? The religious side of it too. One of the original endings for It's a Wonderful Life was to have George go at the very end of it, go say the Lord's Prayer, which would have been fine, but Frank Capra realized that maybe the stronger message was just letting his friends and family come in and let that. And I think a lot of times Frank Capra kind of gets a raw deal because he's seen as Capricorn and being too corny or whatever, but he had his ways of pulling back and like finding more of a subtle way to get a message across too. So I don't know.
That scene's just beautiful, and if I'm watching alone, it just pummels me. It's so good.
It is so good.
Yeah. So I think you know how we feel about It's a Wonderful Life. We could talk about it all night, so we need to get out of here. But I hope you've seen It's a Wonderful Life. If you haven't, what better time than this year before Christmas 2013 or 2014 happens or whatever. See it in the summer. Who cares?
Yeah, totally.
It's not just a Christmas movie. It's a great story for any time of the year. And we will be back next year now with a whole new slate of movies. I've got a couple really exciting films we're going to be talking about. I can't wait to see what Melissa makes me watch next. And I've got a couple that she's going to watch. And we're going to be over at a new site, too. So details coming, more information coming. Thanks for checking out the Classic Movie Gush. This is number 20. We'll be back with 21 next year. See you next time.